Hey guys, Chubbs here, back again with another ACS scripting tutorial. And today we're going to be taking a look at libraries, which allow you to have scripts and functions that you can access from any map, and the LOADACS lump, which allows you to execute scripts and even call functions anytime a map is loaded. So first of all, we're going to be taking a look at libraries. And if the map that you're currently seeing seems familiar, that's because this is the same exact map that I made for my functions tutorial. So if you haven't seen that tutorial, you can go ahead and check it out. But the reason I have this map pulled up is because it contains a function that I would like to be able to use in other maps in this WAD. And that function is the show notification function. So this function allows you to pass in text to show on the screen by way of HUD message, and it also allows you to optionally play a sound effect along with that message. So I would really like to be able to have access to this in any other map in this WAD. So I did go ahead and I added a second map to this WAD, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that up for you real quick. It's just a simple map. So you can see it's quite simple. Just we have the player start, and then this sort of small hallway-like area, and then there's nothing across the hallway. But inside the hallway, you can see that there's a pretty obvious secret door, and when you open that door, it just leads to a small room with a berserk pack. But what I would like to be able to do is to call that show notification function on this map so that whenever the player sort of enters this area with the hidden door, a message pops up that sort of tells him, hey, there's a secret nearby. So the problem with this right now is that if I pull up this map scripts, you can see that because each map has its own scripts, there's nothing here, so we can't call that function. We could, of course, if we really wanted to, we could go back to the first map, we could pull up its scripts and functions, and we could just select this entire show notification function, copy it, and move it over to the second map, and that would work, but that would also be very inefficient, because if we really built this WAD up and had a whole bunch of levels, let's say that we had done that copying and pasting across all of them, and then let's say we reached a point to where we were like, you know what, I want the message to be a different color. That would then mean that we would have to go to every single map, pull up its scripts, and change the color in all those maps, and that would be very tedious, and like I said, just very inefficient. If, on the other hand, we had this function inside of a library, and that's where we were calling it from, then if we ever wanted to make a change, all we would have to do is change the function inside that library, and then any maps that imported that library would have that change. So that would mean you would only need to make that change in one place. So with all that talking out of the way, as I have explained now, what we really want to do is sort of isolate this show notification function. We just want to put this function inside a library, and that way we can import that library and call that function no matter what map we're working on. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to select this entire function, and I'm going to copy it, and now we need to put it in a library. And making a library is almost identical to making a script, or to like writing out a script file for a brand new map. So instead of doing it here in Doom Builder, what we're going to do is we're actually going to do it in a text file. So it's sort of going to be like an old school style. So just for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this project in Doom Builder. And this is going to seem odd, but you'll understand why we're doing this here in just a second. So whenever we make the text file, what we're going to do is we're going to make it in our Doom Builder directory. So where you need to go to is your Doom Builder directory, and then go to compilers, and then the ZDoom folder, and you should end up here where you have some different ACS files, and you should also see an ACC executable. And this part is really important because this ACC executable is a compiler. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically put the library into a text file, and then we're going to use this executable to compile it, and then we're going to put the compiled file into our WAD. So let's do this step by step. First, we're going to create a brand new text file, and the name of the text file is going to be the name of the library. Library names should be short, and I think the character limit is actually just 8, so you need to keep them very short. Since this is going to be a library that contains a function that basically shows a message on the screen, I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. I'm just going to call it MSG LIB, and that's sort of short for message library. I'm going to save that. Next, I'm going to open this text file in Notepad, and I'm going to copy that entire function that I had from my map. And like I said, from this point on, it's going to be almost identical to like writing a brand new script for a fresh map. So above this function, we're going to type the include statement that we always have at the top of a brand new map. So I'm going to type the number sign or the pound sign, include, space, and then inside quotations, we're going to type zcommon.acs. So this should seem very familiar. But we're going to do something special above this that basically turns this into a library. So we're going to go above that include line, and here we're going to type the number sign or the pound sign, and instead of include, we're going to type the word library, space, and then inside quotations, we're going to type the name of the library. So let's just keep the same name just to be consistent. So we're going to type MSG LIB, so that's the name of this library. And so now what we've essentially done is we've created a library with this name, and this library will contain this function. So pretty simple and straightforward. So let's go ahead and save this file. And now, like I said, what we need to do, this file on its own is not going to be sufficient. We need to compile this file, that way we can actually use it in our WAD. To do that, all you have to do is click your file and drag it onto that ACC executable like I'm doing now and let go. This will compile it, and as you can see here, you should get a new .o file that appears alongside your text file. This .o file is the compiled version. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this into our WAD. So let's go over to Slade, and let's open the WAD that we were just working on. And currently we have that alert sound in it and a sound info entry. But what we're going to do is I'm going to pull up that the ZDoom directory that we were just looking at inside of our Doom Builder folder. I'm going to drag the .o file into our WAD and let go. And you can see here that under type, it now says compiled ACS. So Slade knows that this is a compiled ACS file. Next, I'm going to click and select it, and I'm going to use this up arrow, and I'm going to move it to the very top of my WAD. That way it's the top entry. And now we need to add 2 entries to this WAD. And these are going to be basically like ACS markers, so that our WAD knows where to look for this. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to click the new entry icon. It's the sort of piece of paper with the E on it. And the first entry is going to be called A_start. And then we're going to do it again, and we're going to call this entry A_end. So now we have 2 markers. You can see the type is listed as marker. And what we need to do is we need to put start above the compiled file, and we need to make sure end is below the compiled file. So I'm going to click start. I'm going to move it above the compiled file, and we already have it the way we want it. So your compiled library ACS lump file should be sort of sandwiched in between the start and the end markers, just like this. And as far as Slade is concerned, I believe we are pretty much complete. So that's all we really need to do here. So that was short and simple. You just put the compiled file in here, add the 2 markers, make sure they're at the top and that they are positioned like I have them here, and that's it. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to close this in Slade and save my changes. And we are not done just yet. So first I'm going to go back to that directory that we were just in with the ACC file, and I would like to point out that we still have that .o file in here. This is the compiled version that we dragged into our WAD. By dragging it into our WAD, what we did is we made a copy of it, so we don't need this version here inside of our Doom Builder directory. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete this file. Hit the delete key. Do not delete your text file though. We're going to need this, and you're going to see why here in just a second. So what we need to do is we need to move this file into some sort of an easily accessible directory, because we're going to have to point our WAD to it, and you'll see how that's done here pretty soon. So I've already made a directory. This is an easily accessible directory. On my computer, I put it under my C drive, and then the directory name is simply ACS_libraries. You can put it wherever you want, but I recommend putting it somewhere that you can easily access, somewhere that's not going to require you to type out some sort of really long path name. So for me, I'm just going to be able to do C and then ACS libraries. It's just going to be a short path. So let's go to our text file. I'm going to drag it into that directory that I made. And now what we're going to have to do is pull up our WAD, and we're going to point it to this location here under C, basically my C drive, and then the ACS libraries folder, and then this file. So let's go ahead, let's open Doom Builder. Let's open the WAD that we were just working on. And before we point it to that directory, what I want to do is, since we now have this show notification function in the library, we don't need it inside this map anymore. So I'm going to select this entire function like I've done here, and I'm going to delete it. And I can't compile just yet because this map scripts, as you can see, have several calls to that function, and since I deleted it, that function doesn't exist and it's going to give me an error. But we're going to fix that because we are about to import that library that we just made. So to do that, you go up above your include line, just like this. We're going to type the number sign or the pound sign, and this time instead of typing library, we're going to type import, because we're not making this a library. We're wanting to import a library, and that way we can use any of its scripts and functions. Next, here's the important part. This is where you type the path to that script file that you made. So again, let me pull up my window here, if I can get to the correct folder. So we're going to want to point it to this path. It's going to be the C drive, ACS_libraries, and then your file, whatever its name is. And like I said, your path doesn't have to be the same as this. You don't have to use this same directory name, but I recommend using a directory that's going to have a short path so you don't have to type a whole lot. So let's get back to our script editor and let's import it. So again, we need to type the path name. So mine's going to be my C drive, and then ACS_libraries, and then the name of the library. I called mine MSG_lib, and then you have to type the file extension, so it's going to be .txt. So what this does, it may be obvious to you, but I'm going to explain it. This tells this map's script file to import this library. And so what this will do when we compile, it's going to take all of that library's functions and scripts, and it's going to allow us to use them. So whenever it sees this show notification function call, even though we no longer have that function in this script, because we have that function in our library, it's going to allow us to use it. So here's the big test. Let's click the compile button and see if it works. So you can see we compiled without errors. So even though we are using this function and we don't even have that function in this map scripts, we're able to use it thanks to this library. So first of all, let's just play the map and let's see if it works. Okay, great. So you could see that the function worked correctly. I just wanted to test it to make sure that it would work. And now here is the really big test. So let's go over to our second map. I'm going to say that we do want to save the changes. So let's load up map 02, and here's going to be the cool part. So I'm going to pull up this map's scripts, and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to start just like a brand new map. So I'm going to do the include line zcommon.acs, and we do want to import that library so we can use show notifications. So we're going to sort of do the same thing. We're going to do the number sign or the pound sign import, and let's type that same directory. So I'm going to do, in my case, the C drive, ACS_libraries, and then the name of that library file, message library, and then the extension. Make sure you don't forget the extension. And now, here's where I can just write whatever script I want, and then I can call the show notification function. So this script is just going to be when you enter this area. So I'm just going to call it, let's see, script. I'm just going to call this secret notification, because that's what it's going to do. It's going to notify you there's a secret nearby. And here is the big part. Inside this script, even though we don't have any functions in this map script file, I'm going to call the show notification function that exists here. So let's do show notification, and first we need to pass it the text. There's a secret nearby, and then we need to tell it whether or not to play a sound. I guess we will. We'll say true. So here we go. Let's see if it compiles. So we did compile without errors. That's great. Now we just need to test it and make sure it actually works. So let's assign that script to this line, and we'll just make this a one-time use. So we'll give it an action of 80, script execute, set it to the secret notification script. When the player walks over, it's not going to be repeatable. Let's check it out. Let's see if it works. Okay, perfect. So that is exactly what I wanted, and that shows you the power of libraries. Even though we didn't have this function anywhere in this map script, just by doing this import statement and importing that library, we were able to use it. So now we can make any map we want to in this WAD and just include this statement right here, and we can use that function. And before I conclude this this part of the tutorial, I want to show you guys something that's really cool. And I was talking about it earlier in the tutorial, how if you want to make a change, you only have to do it in one spot. We're going to make a quick and easy change. We're just going to change the color of the text. So the text is red. Let's say we wanted to change it to white. I'll show you how you can do that. So let's close this in Doom Builder. Let's go to wherever that text file is, because this is the library ACS file that basically tells the function what to do. And you can see the color right here. And I also want to point out, I went a little fast there. This file that I'm referring to is the one that's in your custom directory. So in my case, it's the C drive and then ACS libraries. But like I said, right now this is what the color's set to. It's set to red, so I'm just going to change this to CR white. Now that I've made that change, I'm going to save. And that alone is not enough, because remember, we have to compile this file, because the compiled version is the most important part. So let me pull up that ACC directory that's inside of our Doom Builder directory. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to move this file here from my my ACS libraries directory, but I am going to drag it onto ACC to compile it. And notice now that the compiled version, the .o version, appeared here in my ACS libraries folder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in Slade. So let's pop open Slade. Let's open our WAD. And up here is where we originally put it. You can see it's in between A start and AN. But what you're looking at is the old version. This is the version that had the red text. So I'm going to delete this entry. And we're just going to go here to the .o file that we just generated. Put it into our WAD. And I'm going to make sure that we place it in between the A start and AN markers. So we have now put in the updated compiled version. So I'm going to close it now and save the changes. And just like last time, that .o file doesn't need to remain here, because we just made a copy in our WAD. So I'm going to delete it here. So we're done. We've changed it to white just by making that change here and then compiling it. So let's do the big test. Let's play the map in Doom Builder and see if that change actually worked. So I'm going to pop open we'll just do the first level. We'll play it, and then we'll also go to the second level and test it there, and then we'll be right back. Okay, awesome. So that shows you just how useful libraries are. We were able to use that function regardless of the map, and we were also able to just go to the library, change the text color, and recompile, and that change carried across both of the maps where I imported that library and called that function. So now that we've covered libraries, I want to show you guys something that I think is really just as awesome, and that is the load ACS lump. And like I said early in the video, this allows you to basically have scripts and even functions that will execute automatically every time you enter a map. So you can use this like for certain introductions and different things like that without you having to explicitly put those into the map scripts. So I've set up a small example here. This is really just a lazy example. So I'm going to go ahead and fire that example up. It just has one map, and it's just as lazy as it gets, just a square room with a player start. So there's nothing to do in this room, but that's on purpose. I want there to be nothing in this room so that we can have an ACS script that just automatically runs. And I also want to show you here, this map has no scripts at all. So we're going to do something similar to our libraries example. We're basically going to write a library and we're going to compile it, but we're going to be executing it by using the load ACS lump instead of doing the import. So first what I want us to do is just to write a basic script that we can test here, and then we'll put it in a library. So let's pretend that we're writing a script for this map. I'm going to do the include sign, or the include statement. So the number sign include, and then zcommon.acs. And what I want this load ACS function to do, or this load ACS script to do, is I just want it to print the current name of the level on the screen every time the player enters the level. And we're going to talk more about that here in just a second. So I'm going to name this script, for now I'll just call it show level name, but we're probably going to change this here in just a second, and I'll explain why. I'm going to make this an enter script so that it automatically runs when the player enters the level. And then we're going to be using HUD message for this. So I'm going to go to the Wiki real quick. And I want it to be a message that fades in and then fades out. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to use this as a reference guide. So let's go back to our script editor. And I'm just going to paste this as a comment just so I can have it here for reference. So let's go ahead and just do a quick HUD message that shows the level name. And we're not going to put the level name in just yet, but I'm going to come back and show you something about that. So we'll do HUD message. And for now, we're just going to type a string, but we're going to make this a level name. We'll come back to it here soon. Text here, so we're going to change this part. Here's the rest of it though. We're going to do HUD message fade in out for the type, and you can see the next piece of info it needs is an ID. I'm actually going to make this 0. We're not going to have an ID because it's just going to show up and then fade away, so I'm not going to be worried about giving it a certain ID. For the color, we'll just make it yellow, so I'll just do CR_yellow. For the X and the Y, I'm going to make the X halfway across the screen, and I'm going to make the Y just a little ways down, so we'll just do 0.03. The hold time, that's how long it'll stay on the screen after it's faded in. I'll just do 4 seconds. And then for the fade in, you can see it's asking for in time and out time. That's how long it takes to fade in and out. I'm just going to do half a second for each of those. So to do a quick recap, if I can get my zoom level right, we have written a basic enter script called show level name, and right now it's not actually showing the level name. It's just using HUD message to say text here, and the type of HUD message is fade in and out. It's colored yellow. It's going to be near the middle of the screen at the top. It's just going to take half a second to fade in. It's going to stay there for 4 seconds. Then it's going to take half a second to fade out. And I'm also, before I continue here, I'm going to use set font, which is a built-in function, and I'm going to say big font. That way this message is large and easy to see. But let's just run a quick test for now, and we're going to eventually change this to show the level name. So let's compile this, just run a quick test, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I really just wanted to test it to make sure the position was correct and that the fade time was right and all that stuff. But you could see that it worked. We saw this text at the top, but that's not what we want. We want the level name. So I'm going to show you guys something really cool. So let's go over to the Wiki. And I've used print and HUD message a bunch in the past, and we've mostly used it for like printing strings, just like we just did, and even printing integers and stuff. But there's also a really cool type that you can use called name. It's simply called name. So instead of like an S for string, you just type the letter N as in name. And you can see here that there are a bunch of built-in names that you can use, and these essentially are like automatic in regards to the level that you're currently on, or even the skill level. So if you insert this print name underscore level name, that will print the name of the level that you're currently on. If you just do level, that'll print the lump name like map 01, map 02. You can do skill to print the skill level. You can do next level for the lump name of the next map. So you can see the options here. But this is really nice because it's automated. So if you use print name level name, no matter what level you're on, it's guaranteed to print that level's name instead of you having to manually type the level name in. So it's automatic, and therefore it's very flexible. So we're going to use this. So remember, the type name is in, and I'm actually going to copy this right here because level name is the one that we want, the one that prints the actual level name. But I'm going to select this and copy it. Let's go back to the editor, pull up the script. And so we're going to change this. We don't want this to be a string anymore. We want this to be a name. So instead of an S, I'm going to change it to an N. And then instead of text here inside quotations, we're just going to change this to print name level name. And again, this is just automatic, and depending on what level you're on, it's going to print the exact name. So if this works, when we test the map now, it should say entryway, since that is the default name of map 01. So let's test it and see if it works. Okay, awesome. So as you can see, it did indeed show entryway. And the reason I'm doing all this is because we now have a script that we know will print the level name at the top of the screen. So what I want us to do is turn this into a load ACS script so that every time we fire up a level, the name of the level is shown at the top of the screen. And this is, I'll admit, this is pretty much just an idea that I ripped off of Eternity, because that WAD does this as well. But that's the goal of this. We're going to turn this into a load ACS function, and that way it'll happen automatically, and we don't have to have this in every single map. It'll just, even if a map doesn't have any scripts in it at all, the load ACS will make sure that this script runs, and we will always see the level name. So we're going to be doing something very similar to what we did with libraries. Instead of a text file this time, though, we're going to type most of it in here. So we already have the script that we need. We don't need to change this yet. I will change the name, though, here in just a second. But up at the top, we're going to include a library name. So I'm going to type the number sign or the pound sign. And then instead of import or include, we're going to type library. And this is similar to when we were making a library. So we're going to pretty much do the same thing. And now we need to type the library name. I'm going to keep it short and sweet again. I'm going to call this intro lib. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's exactly 8 characters, so that'll work just fine. And What I've seen is recommended for load ACS functions and scripts is that they have unique names, because if a map script or a map function happens to share that same name, then I think the map function or the map script will override it, and you don't want that to happen. So I've seen that it's recommended that you give your scripts and functions rather long-winded names. That way the odds of them ever being matched are slim to none. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this script name a bit convoluted. So I'm going to call it the name of the library underscore, and then I'm going to add underscores here between each word. So this is a pretty bad looking name. So it's intro lib underscore show underscore level underscore name. But we're doing that on purpose so that if a map ever has any scripts, the odds of it having a script with this same name are next to none. So now we're not going to be able to compile this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this. So I'm going to select it all. I'm going to copy it, and I'm just going to erase this and hit compile, because I don't want this map to have any scripts. And we're going to close this WAD, and we're doing something similar to what we did earlier. So we're going to go to our Doom Builder directory where the ZDoom folder is with the ACC executable. We're going to start a new text file, and I'm sure this is already seeming familiar. We're going to type the name of the library. For me, it was the one I just made was intro lib, and I'm going to leave the text extension. We're going to open that text file. I'm going to paste in everything I just had. I'm going to save it because we don't need to add or change anything. And then we need to compile it just like we did earlier. So I'm going to drag this text file onto ACC. And there we go. We got that .o compiled file. Now let's hop over to Slade. And let's load the WAD that we were just working on. And just like with the libraries that we were working with earlier, we're going to go to that .o file that we just compiled. I'm going to drag that into our WAD here in Slade. You can see that it recognizes it as a compiled ACS file. I'm going to move it to the top. And again, just like with libraries, we're going to add the A start and A end markers. So let's add a new entry, call it A underscore start, add another new entry, A underscore end, and just like before, we want to sandwich this this lump here in between those markers. So I'm going to click the start marker, use the up arrow, and now you want to get it like this so that these files are above everything else, and so that you have A start and then your lump and then A end. So we're almost finished. This is actually going to be easier than the library example that I gave earlier, because now all that we have to do is add one last entry, and this entry is the load ACS lump. So we're just going to type load ACS, click OK, and to be safe, I'm going to click and select this, and I'm going to move this to the very top. You do not want this to be in between the markers, so don't put it in between those. But with this lump still selected, we're going to click View as Text, and this part is as simple as it gets. You just type the name of the lump or the library. So we're just going to type intro lib. That's it. So I'm going to click off it, save. We'll go back, and you can see that it now that we've saved that entry, it recognizes it as an ACS loader. So what's going to happen is when we play this WAD now, it's going to see this load ACS entry, and then it's going to look for whatever we have in here. And in this case, all we have is just this one library or this one lump, but it'll go grab that library, and then it will automatically execute its scripts and its functions every time a map is played. So the map doesn't even have to have any scripts of its own, and it doesn't even have to use that import statement that we did earlier whenever we explicitly called a function. This is just going to happen automatically, and if I pull up that file that we were just working with, since this is an inner script, it's just going to happen. It's going to run whenever we enter the level. There's not going to be any need to explicitly call it. And for load ACS, that's typically what you're going to want. You're going to want to have something like that. But all that talking out of the way, now is time to test this. So let's close this WAD in Slade and save our changes. Go back to Doom Builder. load our WAD again. And we don't have to do anything else here. If we pull up the scripts, you can see there's nothing here, but this should work. And what's going to be cool about this is LOADACS is a game-wide thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to test this, and you should see the level name pop up top, which is entryway. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to skip around to some of Doom 2's levels, just the vanilla levels. And because LOADACS is a game-wide sort of lump, you should see the same effect, basically the same script being run across those levels as well. So let's go ahead and test it, and let's see what happens. All right, that worked great. So I don't know about you guys, but I think that is really cool. That's a really nice way to give your maps a custom introduction. And since it's game wide, like I said, you don't even have to give your maps any scripts. You don't have to worry about having to import a library or anything like that. It just, the LOADACS lump that's in your WAD does all the work for you. It just automatically calls any scripts you want it to. You tell it which libraries to work with, and it does it automatically for you. So hope you guys have found this useful, and I will also be including these WADs in the video description in case you want to check them out for yourself. But if you have any questions about this, anything that you've seen in this tutorial, feel free to comment below. And as always, I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope you've learned something. I hope I haven't confused any of you. But again, thanks for watching. This is Chubbs signing out.